Hi, welcome. In this video, I'd like to take a minute to talk about the leash walk, why it is that walking a dog on the leash. Now, the context of walking, again, you have to put it in context here to discern, why it's a problem. But when you're trying to walk the dog on the leash as a follower to you, or trying to bring the dog under influence, leadership, and within the script itself, at the beside you at the heel position, why it's the first thing to start to wash out is because that's one of the clues that the dog's starting to gain power in the relationship. Because again, the leash is a connection point, and the dog connects it to the person relationally that way. So when you're trying to connect with the dog and bring it under reasonable influence, and again, that's one of the things to understand when you're assessing kind of where you're standing in the relationship, is really looking at defining what takes the form of what's reasonable. I mean, of course, how people think really plays a part in interpreting what's reasonable, what's not. Because again, you have to really think about this. If people are thinking a certain way, then typically they're going to put everything into a certain box, so to speak, and say, well, this is all bad. Even so, that's why you'll see people who align a certain way in their thinking. They're really desperate to try to define it a certain way so that they can kind of feel better about what they do. But see, that's the problem, is that nature doesn't work that way. It's the packaging that's the problem. And just like the leash walk, if you're why it becomes such a problem, and then people who are struggling, say, with other behavior issues, generally, if you encounter them and ask them about how's the dog walk on the leash, they'll say, well, I can't walk the dog on the leash anymore. It's a major problem unless the dog's walking in front of me, and then it still becomes a problem, because it'll still wash out. But that's part of the issue, is really people who are letting the dogs walk in front of them. What you'll see is, because it's relational and dogs are wanting to be out in front for that very reason, they're starting to seek and gain fulfillment relationally, and they're starting to want to. What they're doing is they're devaluing that person, they're objectifying, and they're starting to take a different position. Not just in the relationship, but even at various interactions, they'll want to go out in front. And so that's why it's such a problem. It's not just, because I guarantee you, if you see a owner allowing the dog to walk them on the leash, you're gonna see problems throughout the relationship. They may not recognize it, but that's, how you think one way is going to transfer into everything else. But the other problem here is the dog isn't going to accept being brought under control that way. Okay, as the dog starts, you're going to start to have a problem on the leash. The dog's going to want to be out in front, and then you're still going to have problems because it's still going to bottom out. But the whole concept here is to understand that that's an indicator. That's one thing to indicate that you're going to have problems. Now, the issue with clarity or putting it in the context is part of the problem. Is people oftentimes are going to feel blindsided because they're going to feel like they're not getting enough clues or enough indicators because of how the dog is relating to them. See, that's something you really have to understand. When dogs start to objectify and devalue the person, you may not get the information that you expect, okay, within the human thinking, because you're not going to have the clarity, because the dog, most of your interactions aren't going to challenge the dog that way to give you that clue. But see, that's why when you see certain things start to become a problem, that's your clue. Okay, you have to understand that's already telling you that the dog is starting to reject, influence, starting to reject, being brought under leadership, and so you'll have the other behavior problems because that's how the dog's mind works. It starts to push beyond the parameters of that script of being a follower, and starting to seek. Gain and seek fulfillment through power, find comfort in power, and so going to accept certain personality types, reject others. But if you really think about your worst moments, in the relationship, I guarantee you it's going to be moments that the script changes. You're changing the script out in the dog, and it's not even that you're doing anything unreasonable. the dog is starting to hit that tipping point. So anyway, just really consider what I'm saying, you know, because if you hit the street with your dog on the leash, that's a pretty good, you'll get a pretty good test as to what is happening, okay, within that script. And again, you need to make sure it's defined properly. So, because sometimes what will happen is people will walk their dogs using, say, the pinch collar, and so you're not going to get a good take on even where you're standing in, because the dog's reacting to that device, okay, and staying in that position, but the dog still is devaluing. So you have to make sure the script, just use a flat collar, and move the dog into the sit position, start to bring the dog under reasonable influence, and see how the dog's mind reacts to that. If the dog is truly a follower, even before you touch on that dog, the dog is going to stay in the script that you want, stay in the position beside you. You want to define it that way, because that's going to give you kind of your litmus test, so to speak, and allow you to kind of see the level that the dog is challenging, that script as a follower to you. So anyway, just something to think about. Thanks for watching. I hope you have a great day.